Welcome to Game and Grains, the whiskey gaming channel. I'm your player one, Richard. Now, if I were to ask you, what state do you think holds the title for birthplace of American whiskey? You might say something like Kentucky or Tennessee. Now, while those are both great choices, the actual answer just might surprise you. The state that can claim that they are the birthplace of American whiskey is none other than Pennsylvania. Now, with me being the nerd that I am, I wanted to taste a little bit of history. So I reached out to the folks over at Stoll and Wolfe Distillery, located in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, and they were generous enough to send me a sample of their rosin rye single barrel. Now, of course, I'm going to give myself a pour and bring you along, sharing with you all of the tasting notes and letting you know what whiskey from the birthplace of American whiskey tastes like. So grab your controllers, pour yourself a dram, and let's get into it. Stoll and Wolfe Distillery is located in Lidditz, Pennsylvania. Its name is derived from both of its co-founders, Eric Wolfe and Dick Stoll. Now, if that name Dick Stoll sounds familiar, that is because he is the former and last master distiller of Michter's Distillery when it was once located in Pennsylvania. Stoll did his mentorship under one Charles Everett Beam, the longtime master distiller at Michter's and grandnephew of one Jim Beam. Stoll would eventually take over as master distiller in 1972 and would continue in that role until 1990. Michter's unfortunately went bankrupt and closed its doors on Valentine's Day in 1990, forcing many of its employees, including Dick, into early retirement. Now, Mr. Stoll would eventually come out of retirement around 2016 alongside with the Wolfe family to create Stoll and Wolfe Distillery. They produce a wide variety of spirits, including gin, vodka, brandy, and bourbon. But their most notable spirit is their rye whiskey, specifically rosin rye, which was a forgotten grain due to its cross-contamination with other varieties of rye. With the help of Penn State Agriculture Department and the Klein family farm, Stoll and Wolfe was able to bring back this lost grain to the point where they are now able to use it as one of their staple products in their whiskey line. All right, so I have two different samples here in front. One is from the actual company, Stoll and Wolfe. They were very generous once I reached out to send me a sample of their rosin rye single barrel. But before we dive into that one, when I was going through my cabinet preparing for this video, I came across a sample from none other than the Whiskey Shaman. He did an interview this summer, and they had sent him over some samples, and he was kind enough to share with me some of the samples that they had sent him over. So we're going to start off with this just because this is a lower proof. This is the Stoll and Wolfe rye. It is their standard offering, and it comes in at 90 proof. It has a mash bill of 60% rye, 30% corn, and 10% malted barley. So let's go ahead and get in on the nose. This is very pleasant. So the first thing that I'm getting is almost like a tropical fruit note. So a weird analogy, but if you've ever gone somewhere like a Whole Foods or something like that and have opened up some of the dried fruit, this is kind of what I'm getting. Specifically, like a dried peach or apricot, closer to an apricot. The next thing that I'm getting on the nose, and this may sound a little bit like a cop-out, but there is that rye spice. It's very mild. Now, when I say rye spice, I think about actually having like a piece of rye bread. I enjoy a good Reuben, and if you're not familiar with that, they typically use rye bread in that sandwich. And so this is what I mean when I say rye spice. There is just the very faintest, just a minuscule bit of mintiness, but it's not anything that is super overpowering or pungent. In fact, it's very hard to pick out, but it's just it's kind of lingering in the back just a little. So we'll get in on the taste. Cheers. Okay, so very mild. Again, with it being 90 proof, it's very soft. You get a lot of those herbaceous notes from the rye up front. As it starts to dissipate, you do get a little bit of sweetness. A good way to describe this is if, with it being Thanksgiving right around the corner, if you can think about maybe like some of the herbs that you would use in stuffing, like a thyme or a rosemary, something like that, there's just like a faint herbaceous note to it. Again, nothing overpowering, nothing overwhelming. This is actually really good. As it starts to dissipate, those rye notes go away, and then you're left with, again, just that light sweetness on the finish. So, I mean, if you're getting into rye, this might be a good gateway to stepping in to a rye whiskey. Like I said, very mellow, very soft. The rye spices are not overwhelming. You don't get any of the mintiness, or if it is, like I said, it's just like if you were to just do a little spritz in there. So that is the standard offering of their rye. So over here, this is the sample that was sent to me from Stoll and Wolfe. This is their rosin malted single barrel rye. It says 58 months aged and 106 proof. Now, there's a really cool story about rosin rye. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it was an all but forgotten grain. The folks over at Stoll and Wolfe reached out to, I believe it was Penn State Agricultural Department, and they were loaned, I believe it was like 5 ounces of this almost extinct or forgotten rye. They were able to propagate and grow it, and to a point where now, with the help of the folks over at Klein Family Farms, they have, I believe, like 50 acres worth of this rye that they now use in their whiskey. So really cool story. I highly encourage you to check out their website, check out the podcast over there with Whiskey Shaman to find out more. All right, so let's go ahead and get on the nose of this one. So not as fruity as perhaps the 90 proof. In fact, it's very mellow. Now I am getting a hint of fruit, but it's nowhere near as prominent as that. The herbaceous nose is a little bit more noticeable, I guess, with it being a higher proof. I did forget to mention, I believe the mash bill for this, when I looked it up online, was 65% rye, 25% corn, and 10% malted barley. I don't know if my math is mathing, but anyway, a slightly higher percentage of the rye is present in this one. So let's get in on the taste. Cheers. So if you could take the flavors of this guy and elevate them, that's what you get here. Still very smooth. There's a little bit of heat on the back end, but the flavor is just great. That rye is a little bit more forward as it dissipates. The sweetness that you'd probably get from the corn isn't as evident as it was in this particular one, but this is really good. Let's get it on the taste one more time. Cheers. Yeah. So, again, getting into ryes, either one of these would be a great option. Like I said, a lot of the same notes that I'm getting from their basic rye offering, I'm getting here. So you're getting those herbaceous rye notes that dissipate into that slight sweetness. I think if I were to have to choose just for like a leisurely sip of rye whiskey, this one would probably be my go-to. But just because of the experience and just the neat factor of that rosin rye, this one's just a really neat whiskey as well. I definitely want to go back and try this again. I don't know if going from the 90 proof to the 106 proof is affecting the flavor or not. But anyway, both are all around great offerings. So thank you again for sticking around until the end. Please do all the YouTubey things. If you like this video, in the comments before, have you tried a rye from Pennsylvania? There's lots of other great Pennsylvania distilleries out there. There's Liberty Pole, obviously Stoll and Wolfe, Wooden Hat. So in the comments, have you tried a Pennsylvania rye or a Pennsylvania whiskey? And then of course, if you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe. As of recording this video today, I'm at 60 followers, so 40 less than what I want to hit before the end of the year. So I would greatly appreciate it if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, and yeah. All right. I'm your favorite player one, Richard. Have a good one.